Dude, this figure is so goth.
Coming to paperback and e-readers, the Steam Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of the Steam Season of the Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers.
Last year, I heard about Frank Frazetta's family starting up the Frazetta Girls line of action figures, which would be based on the art of their father, Frank Frazetta. And the first action figure I picked up was the Fire and Ice Tigra, and that figure was one of the best figures of 2024, which had a great balance of sculpt and articulation, and captured the spirit of Frank Frazetta's art, while giving us a dynamic action figure with great sculpt and really solid articulation. And when I heard that Frank Frazetta's Frazetta Girls was getting ready to do a Vampirella figure, I had to put in a pre-order, and I was really happy when I got this figure, which was supposed to be delivered in March at the end of February. And after getting this figure, I'm really excited to go out here and share this figure with you in a review. Now, Vampirella is a horror character who's been around since the late 1960s, and Frank Frazetta is known for designing the iconic cover for Vampirella #1. And a Vampirella action figure based on Frank Frazetta's art is something that I had to own. Now, this isn't the first Vampirella action figure ever made. No, that honor goes back to more action collectibles back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. I would say 2000 is when that figure came out, and more action collectibles created by, I believe his name is Claiborne Moore, created one of the best Vampirella action figures ever made back then, creating not only one based on the iconic version from the comics, but also made one inspired by the late Julie Strain, who was a model who dressed up like Vampirella, and that figure basically was an absolutely fantastic figure with a beautiful sculpt, because More Action Collectibles created some really great figures back then with really dynamic sculpts, such as the Witchblade figure, which I wish I could get my hands on, and other figures like Lady Death, and other figures like those in the Buffy series. More Action Collectibles really created some really great figures back then, and the Vampirella figure came towards the end of the line of More Action Collectibles, and that sculpt, again, was absolutely fantastic, and I really loved that figure. I never was able to get a chance to get it because my term at AmeriCorps ended. I didn't have the money to go start getting into figures like I wanted to again, but that figure was one of the best figures of the 2000s and the late 90s, and as time went on, we got more. It was a long drought of Vampirella figures, because when it comes to indie characters, it's a long time before you see them, and that's why I had to jump on the Vampirella figure that was created as part of the Dynamite 3 back in 2021 or so, and I had to jump on that because, again, when it comes to these characters, you only maybe get one, maybe two shots at these indie characters. So even though that figure was pricey, again, I got a good deal on it because I put in a pre-order for it, and I put a pre-order for it in about 2021, and around, I think, about 2022, I was finally able to get that Vampirella figure from Loose Collector Collectibles, and that figure was an absolutely great figure overall, as related to it being updated with having great articulation and great sculpt. But when Frazetta presented their version of Vampirella, again, I had to jump on that figure, and I had to jump on that figure because this was not only going to be a Vampirella, but going to be a Vampirella based on the art of the artist who basically defined the character in creating that iconic cover of Vampirella #1. And based on what I've seen with the pictures, I really was excited for this figure, so I had to go out here and pick up this figure on a pre-order, straight direct from Frazetta Girls at Christmas time, and this was a present to myself, so I had to go out here and pick up this figure, and I'm gonna go out here and unbox this figure in a few minutes, but I first want to get into the packaging. Now, this packaging is absolutely fantastic. We get, again, I'm going to move this Dynamite version from Loose Collector away so you can get a better look at the packaging. And the box here is very nice with some great Frazetta art showing Vampirella in a very cryptic pose. And as she's in this cryptic pose, she's got an alligator behind her and a skull on the ground, and a great cover. Again, that is just like a comic book cover or a horror cover. And the box overall on the front, this really gets you excited for this figure. Now, the side shows us the figure in action and gives us a look at this articulation overall, which has a great balance of sculpt and art as related to things capturing the spirit of Frank Frazetta's art, and gives us some very dynamic posing. So the side shows us the figure, and the back shows us all what we're going to get with this Vampirella figure, where we're going to get a really fantastic looking base of some tombstones and some skulls. We get the Vampirella figure herself, and we also get several alternate heads and an extra hairpiece and 3 sets of hands. And the whole setup for this figure as related to things, again, is very similar to what we got with Tigra from Fire and Ice. Now, when it came down to Tigra from Fire and Ice, we got a great amount of accessories, and we get a similar amount of accessories for the same price. So we get a good deal here. I mean, this figure is on the pricier side, but you get all you want for your money as related to the overall what we're getting as Frazetta is offering. I mean, Frazetta is offering a really good deal in comparison when you consider that this Loose Collector Vampirella is in the similar price range. I mean, this Loose Collector Vampirella is in a similar price range, but the whole thing is with the Loose Collector, yes, you get an alternate head, you get a bat, you get some daggers and some hands, but the whole thing is with this Frazetta version, we get, again, everything as related to a great amount of accessories, and even better than the Loose Collector version, we get a Vampirella figure not only styled like Frank Frazetta's art, but we get a figure that's in much better scale than the Loose Collector version, and we get a figure that, again, it comes in a much more attractive package, because this package, it again opens up. So if you're a mitten box collector, you can display it like this with the package open, and you can show the figure and the accessories. You can show it all off, and it really looks nice, and it looks nice on your shelf, just like this. But the one advantage that this Vampirella will have, because after I did a comparison with Fire and Ice's Tigra, this Vampirella is going to be more in scale with your Marvel Legends, your DC Universe Classics, or your G.I. Joe Classified, and you can have Vampirella out here with your other figures in your collection. I mean, this Vampirella from Loose Collector is a much taller figure and basically towers over other figures, but this Frazetta Vampirella is one that I really am happy to have, because it's just that much smaller, and small enough that it can fit in with my Marvel Legends, so I can have Spider-Man teaming up with Vampirella, or have her working with Batman on a case, or have her working with the Joe team with some vampires. One of the things that I really like about this figure is the scale, and one of the things that I really want to see as related to figures from independent companies like Frazetta Girls and Loose Collector is, let's try to keep these figures in the 6-inch scale, because the 6-inch scale, you really want to make it where these figures are compatible, similar to what Bobby Valla is doing with Valaverse, where he got the figures in line with the Marvel Legends and the G.I. Joe Classified, so you can have those figures be in the background or be working with your characters. That type of compatibility is something I'm looking for in a figure. That's what I'm looking for with figures. And this Vampirella, again, she's a pricey figure, but the value is here for me because, one, I'm getting that great sculpt that is inspired by Frank Frazetta art. I'm getting great accessories, and I'm also getting a great sculpt that is in scale. So I'm really happy to have this figure, and I'm going to be even happier when I get this figure out of the box. Now, Frazetta's Vampirella figure comes laid out in some plastic trays, similar to the way that their Tigra figure comes presented. And the way she's presented basically shows off all the accessories very nicely, such as the extra heads and extra hands and the bat accessory. So everything here is laid out very nicely as related to the presentation, so that you can show this figure unboxed or boxed. And you can go out here and again be able to access all of the parts very easily in this whole tray. Now, I really like the way Frazetta does its tray, that you have to basically pop it open, and basically that's how you get to the figure. And behind this figure's tray is a nice tray, is a tray with the base, so everything is nicely contained. And I'm gonna show everybody the figure in a minute as I unbox her. Now that I've got the outer tray open, we get a better look at Frazetta's Vampirella and all of the cool accessories that she comes with. Now, this Vampirella figure is looking real fantastic, and I really like all the accessories here, such as the head that looks like she's had a snack, and the head that shares her with the bear fangs, and we get an extra head hairpiece and 3 bats, a skull, and a tree that go to the base. Now, if we go to look at the bases on the tray, we've got the base of the graveyard, and we've got the headstones here all laid out very nicely. Everything is really nicely packaged, and I can't wait to get this figure out of the package so that I can show you what she looks like. That came out easier than I expected. Now, out of the box, the Frazetta Vampirella is a fantastic figure with a great sculpt based on the art of the late Frank Frazetta. And I'd have to say that this Vampirella figure not only is designed to not just only look like Frank Frazetta's art, but captures the spirit of that art in 3 dimensions. And this figure has some really great sculpting, and that's one of the highlights of this figure because it's more of a focus on sculpt than articulation, but it blends sculpt and articulation beautifully, the same way that Frazetta girls did with the Fire and Ice Tigra. And this figure is a really, really great looking version of Vampirella that would really go great on your shelf. Now, I really love this figure. I love everything about the overall sculpt, but what I like the most really are the proportions, because the proportions are a lot more balanced than the previous Vampirella we got with Loose Collector. Now, if we look at the Loose Collector Vampirella, yeah, she's got some nice curves, but the curves really are not balanced, and they're not really as proportionate as the ones from Frazetta. The Frazetta one looks more like a real person and looks more balanced overall as related to its overall lines of sculpt, and just looks, again, a lot better based on my preferences. It just looks like a much better figure than the previous Vampirella from Loose Collector. Now, the Loose Collector figure, I'm not going to knock it too much, but it's just, when I look at this Frazetta version just looks way better and just has a much better looking suit overall. I mean, this suit, again, looks like a G-string from a stripper on the Loose Collector version, but the Frazetta one looks like an actual suit a person would wear. So this figure, again, is really nice overall as related to the sculpt, and I really like the paint on this figure. I mean, the paint is very nuanced on this figure, everything from the shading on the flesh tones to the eyeliner that you really have to really look at for the detail, because she has some really nice blue eyeliner over an eyeshadow, and it's hard to really see just in the under a naked eye. But if you look at it under lights, you start to see all the highlights in the flesh tones and in the washes and shading, and it just really makes this figure pop. And everything here just looks absolutely great. And when it comes to this figure, it gets even better when you start to put up the accessories. Now, Frazetta's Vampirella comes with a lot of accessories, and this is where this figure really starts to be worth the money. Now, the Frazetta Vampirella comes with 3 sets of hands, 2 heads, a separate hairpiece so that you can alternate between short and long hairstyles, and also comes with 3 bats so that you can go out here and replicate the poses that Vampirella has in those early appearances of those old 1960s comics. And she also comes with a pair of skulls, which is, one is a human skull, the other is some sort of demon or vampire skull. And the big thing that really that makes this figure really worth it is this base of gravestones, and is looking like a cemetery base, and has the tombstones of Eleanor and Frank Frazetta, and basically the days that they died. Now, this whole set here really is what really makes this Vampirella set worth it, because we get all of these great accessories for that $70 price, and I can see where this is where this figure really starts to be worth it. Now, with this whole set, the Vampirella figure really is awesome, and what's really awesome about this figure is how Frazetta Girls has improved as related to its overall quality. I mean, when it comes down to these accessories, they are a lot better than the ones that I got with the Fire and Ice Tigra. Now, with the Fire and Ice Tigra, when it came down to these heads were very hard to get on and off. However, with the Frazetta Girls Vampirella, the plastic is very soft, so you can go from this neutral facial expression as related to the alternate heads. Now, we've got 2 more alternate heads. We've got a hungry Vampirella with a whole lot, with her fangs bared, looking like she's getting ready to go have herself a nice snack. And we've got another Vampirella head with a sated expression, like she's just filled herself after a nice tasty meal of type O negative. Now, these heads really are where its figure has improved for Frazetta Girls, and the head just comes off real easy compared to Tigra. And you can go from this head, that the hungry face, to the other face very easily by popping this head on. And if you want to again change the hair, you can, let me put this figure down for a minute, and just slip the hair out, and put the hair on this figure, and you've got Vampirella in her early appearances with the long hair. Or you can take this hairpiece off and then slip on another hairpiece, and as you slip on the other hairpiece, you get the short-haired Vampirella. And you can have the short-haired Vampirella with either this fanged head on, or you can just slip that head off, or we can go for the sated smile after she's had her meal and either slip that on with this shorter-haired wig, or you can go to the longer-haired wig. And again, like I'm showing you, all the parts are easy on, easy off, compared to Tigra from the Fire and Ice line. Now, the Fire and Ice Tigra, it's a lot harder. The plastic is a lot harder, but this plastic is a good softness, so it's easy to get those heads on and off, and get them on and off so that you can go out here and be able to put the expressions you want on this figure. Now, as for related to the accessories, you also have the hands, and the hands also come off very easy so that you can go out here and make that cool cryptic pose that Vampirella goes into on many of the Warren publication covers, where she's got the bat on her arm and basically has the bat minion. This is the one that she has on her arm most of the time. And again, you can go out here and create that iconic cryptic pose of Vampirella with the bat, and you can do that and again have her on the base, again on the base out here like this, posed like that. And you can also make it where she can fly the other bats for an awesome gothic scene. Now, in addition to that, we also have been given, again, these hands that, again, come off very easy. And we get, again, 3 sets of hands. We get these gripping hands, which are very nice. And again, go in very easy. I'll try to keep it in the camera, keep it in focus. But the gripping hand goes in very easy. And it's got a nice up and down gesture, similar to Marvel Legends. So the hands, again, go in very nicely as related to things. And again, you can just take them on and off. Well, I got the wrong hand in here for this whole situation, but there are, again, the hands. They go in, again, very easy. And again, the plastic on this Vampirella is far higher quality than that of Tigra, showing me that they, again, over at Frazetta girls are improving. Again, keep putting the wrong hands in. Just keep putting the wrong hands in. Try to put the right hand in. Okay, we got the right hand in. And again, the hands are, again, about making those cryptic poses that she does with the bat. Again, this is a Warren Publications thing that she does, is iconic. And again, got these different heads in. But again, it's all part of this figure. And what makes it fun is that you can, again, pop and swap things as related to Vampirella and still just have her in all these different cryptic poses, and you can do it all around with this figure. Now, when it comes to articulation, Vampirella has a similar articulation setup to Frazetta Girl's Fire and Ice Tigra. And when it came to the Fire and Ice Tigra, there was more of a focus on maintaining the dynamics of sculpt rather than giving you lots of articulation. And that same model is used here for Vampirella, and the whole sculpt is preserved. That basically makes it like this is a movable piece of art, the same way it was for Tigra. Now, as we can see, when it comes down to Tigra, Tigra has a more slimmer athletic build, but still has some curves, whereas Vampirella is a bit more voluptuous, and the whole sculpt, again, staying true to the spirit of Frank Frazetta, is basically showing off those curves, and showing off those curves in that Vampirella suit in a way that basically doesn't take away from the sculpt, but still maintains posability. Well, when it comes to the posability of Vampirella, I'd have to say a lot has improved since they came out with Tigra a year ago. Now, when it came down to Tigra, Tigra was a bit on the stiffer side as related to posability. She had good range of motion, but it's not as good as Vampirella. Now, Vampirella in and of herself moves a lot more smoothly and a lot more fluidly. And again, the articulation here moves a lot better. And basically, we've got, again, a lot smoother articulation as related to the overall joints and the overall setup of the joints. Now, the setup of the joints really move very dynamically, overall here. And we've got a lot of articulation on the level of figures like Marvel Legends, DC Universe Classics, G.I. Joe Classified, and Street Fighter. And this figure can pose almost as well as those, even though she doesn't have as much articulation as those action figure lines. And starting out, the figure stands very well, so she has a good center as related to her base of gravity overall. So the figure stands very nicely on its own. And that's where we start with the articulation with these great ankle rockers. These ankle rockers were so fluid. They just move very smoothly. And that's the start of the articulation for me. And then we get into the knees. Now, I'm not that much of a fan of the knees with the thigh swivel, but they work very well here for movement. They do keep the sculpt of the knees flowing, but they also have good range of motion. We get a good, I think, about 90 degrees on the knee here as related to things. And the knees, again, have where the thigh swivel is. Now, I'd like to see the thigh swivel cut, but yes, it would ruin up the overall aesthetics of the sculpt. But this figure really works well when it's starting to move as related to the hips. Now, the hips, again, from the front, we can't show too much because of YouTube community guidelines, but the whole thing is the hips move very nicely. Like, you can move them and just keep the dynamics of the sculpt. And again, Vampirella can do a split, so she can do the splits as related to things with those hips, and those hips have great movement, and again, very dynamic movement. And that also goes into the torso, which again moves very nicely as related to, you get good side to side and good front and back motion. You get front and back motion. You get really good back motion here. as related to the figure. You get good front motion. I mean, almost as good as a Marvel Legends ab crunch with this figure. You get good ab crunch. And the arms, they have this like halfway ball joint that, again, I'll show you this halfway ball joint. It just moves very nicely, very fluid, very smooth. And you get some sort of elbow that, again, moves very nicely. And the wrists are very easy. Again, they pop in and out. They have good range of motion. And everything, again, moves very nicely. And, again, everything with Vampirella is like a major improvement over Tigra. Now, Tigra was one of the best figures of 2024. And Vampirella basically takes things to another level as related to this articulation setup, which reminds me a lot of the NECA figures. When I look at this figure, it reminds me a lot of the NECA articulation, but you get that same dynamic sculpt and dynamic paint that you usually get with NECA, but with much better plastic. I mean, one of the things I like about Frazetta girls is that they use high quality plastic on their figures, and that high quality plastic really makes it where these figures really are durable when you're posing them and you're not having any problems. I mean, everything here with Vampirella, you get really good posability and good sculpt. Everything just flows together very nicely. And even though this is a premium figure, you definitely see what you're paying for with everything as related to the paints and the sculpt. I'm going to pull Tigra out of the picture, but I wanted to put her there for comparison. But everything that was on Tigra that made her a great figure basically is improved with Vampirella. Now, when it comes to scale, the Frazetta Vampirella scales a little bit better with other 1/12 scale or 6-inch figures than the loose collector version from the Dynamite 3. Now, when it comes down to the Frazetta Vampirella, again, the articulation and setup and the sculpt really make it flow better aesthetically into your collection of other 1/12 scale figures. Now, I like this, again, loose collector Vampirella, but the whole thing is that this figure, again, is a little bit on the tall side, whereas the Frazetta Girls version, while it has more balanced proportions, fits a little bit better aesthetically with other 1/12 scale lines. And I'm going to show that with certain figures as related to things. First, I'm going to start out with this DC Universe Classics Wonder Woman, where they are just about the same size, and that makes it where it looks like she can fit in with other 1/12 figures like Marvel Legends Captain America, and she can also fit in with DC Collectibles characters like DC Collectibles Catwoman. So when we look at all of these figures, they are about close to the same size. Now, I wish that Frazetta's Vampirella was a little smaller, but proportion-wise, she fits well with most of these figures. She fits pretty well with them. And when we go out here and take this same Vampirella figure, I'll pull these figures aside, and I'll put up some other figures like this Valaverse Gemini. Now, this Valaverse Gemini, if she wasn't wearing flats, would possibly be closer to the Vampirella size. Again, good size and scale compared to each other if you're doing, again, a vampire scene, and if you wanted to do a vampire scene with some soldier-style figures, I think maybe she would work pretty well with these G.I. Joe classified figures and fit very well in aesthetically with these characters. I mean, she's a little bit on the tall side, but not on the gigantic side like the Dynamite Vampirella, who I would believe would be somewhat taller, and with her being somewhat taller, would not really fit in too well. But this figure, I think you could do a little fudging, and she could possibly work a lot better in scale with these other figures if you wanted to display these figures together. That's one of the things I kind of look for with 6-inch scale figures. I want them to be able to flow together with each other from different lines, so I can have these characters kind of, you can play with them together. That's something I like to do with different lines. I like to mix my figures together, and this is something I think you could do with the Frazetta Vampirella. Now, this is more of an art style piece, but it looks like you could, again, fit this character in with other characters and not really have that kind of problem. I mean, it looks like you could possibly fit her in, especially with figures on the larger side, like this DC Collectibles Catwoman. She fits in well there. And if I were to go out and, get this Batman. Now, if you wanted to do a Batman and Vampirella team up, they could possibly work well together. I mean, this is what I'm looking for when I buy action figures. I'm looking for figures that will possibly be, you can basically work them together as related to scale and possibly have them working together and have them looking aesthetically correct. Now, when it comes to this Vampirella, she works well, again, with all of these DC lines like DC Universe Classics. She works well with G.I. Joe Classified, and she works well with Marvel Legends. I mean, because of the way she's designed. Now, I know all these figures are not in exact scale with each other, but when you put all these figures together, they do look like they can be put together and work well together, and that's something I'm looking for. I mean, while I like this other Vampirella, she just doesn't look like she would fit very well with these other lines. I mean, it's a nice figure, but the proportions on this Vampirella are a lot better. The paint is a lot better. The sculpt is a lot better. The articulation, again, it's good for this type of figure, which is balancing art, but it fits and flows better with these other characters, and that's something that is a plus for the Frazetta Vampirella, in addition to it being a masterful piece of art. I mean, this figure is a piece of posable art, and that's what makes it great, and you can have it with your other figures and having vampire team-ups, or have even Blade go out here and hunt the Vampirella, or you can try to have her posed like the iconic Frazetta Vampirella #1, and like I'm having right here, you can have her posed like Vampirella #1, but this figure just looks great all around, no matter how you do it. And this figure, basically, I would say is one of the best figures of 2025, and an absolute must-have for your collection. Frazetta Girls Vampirella is one that I highly recommend you go out here and pick up. Now, I know this figure is pricey at $70 on the Frazetta Girls site, and possibly $80 to $90 at places like Big Bad Toy Store. But if you're a fan of horror characters and you're a fan of action figures based on horror characters, I highly recommend you go out here and pick up Frazetta Girls Vampirella. You definitely won't be disappointed, and you definitely won't be disappointed because this is an absolutely fantastic figure with absolutely fantastic accessories and lots of different options, a lot of different options that you have for this figure, and again, comes with a lot of truly great accessories like this base that she has. She has a base that's, again, just well worth the purchase price. And again, this cemetery base that she has, again, is well worth the money all around. And you won't be disappointed by this figure. You won't be disappointed at it at all. No, this figure basically, again, gives you all the value for your dollar and won't disappoint you at all. Again, as related to quality, everything here is top-notch and high quality when you consider what you're getting. I mean, for $70, you're getting, again, this base that has really solid accessories all around in this base with the headstones, the skulls, and the extra heads and hands. I mean, you're getting a really great deal for your money. And this is one figure I'm telling everybody, don't pass up on Frazetta Girls Vampirella. This is one that I'm highly recommending you get. Now, I've been collecting action figures for years, and this is one I tell you gotta go out here and get. And you'll be very happy with this figure. It'll be a great purchase and a great addition to your collection. Now, if you want to pick up some of my Action Pack Fantasy on the SJS Direct imprint, which features a lot of horror stories like Isis Bride of Dracula, Isis Night of the Vampires, Isis Escape from Transylvania, Esteemed Horror in the Hamptons, Eternal Night, the Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl, and many other horror stories. You can find those stories on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those stories at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me be able to do more action figure reviews, and be able to continue to support great independent toy makers like Frazetta Girls, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you're a toy company and you want to send me a figure to review, you can drop an email to sjsdirectamerica@gmail.com. And if you have a great figure, I'd be glad to go out here and review it for you. And if you want to check out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, it's on Lulu.com right now. And you can get my digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, on Amazon for just 99 cents. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.